A good evening and welcome to the Fourth Estate, the program that looks at the news and the angles that journalists have taken in the news. Now, this week has been a particularly hard week for journalists all across the country. Journalists who are covering the petition that was being taken to the Human Rights, United Nations Human Rights rather, by Robert Chagulanyi were beaten. And we have two of those in the studio today to join our panel. And we also have Robert Sempala, who works in the Human Rights Network for Journalists, joining us. Thank you so much for being here today. I just want to start with you, Irene, and maybe from an experience perspective. For the viewers who are not seeing, Irene is now walking with the help of a walking stick, and that's really bad. But Irene, what happened on that day?
Thank you, Raymond. And it's just, let me say, annoying to go with the expectation to cover news and you become the news yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened to us. So we started the press conference around 11 o'clock. And then, you know, after a press conference, you're going to ask a few questions here and there to people you're interested in after they've said this and that. And particularly because Bobi Wine had, let me call it paraded, a few of relatives of missing persons, those whose relatives were murdered, or in some way you feel like you want to speak to the people who are affected in one way or the other. So we did those interviews, and then some petition was shown to us in a booklet. We didn't actually see what was inside that petition. So for us to understand better what would happen when he leaves or when he goes to the UN Human Rights offices, we said, let's go to that place, wait for him to deliver, and then he speaks to us. Or if we, by the way, we were not sure whether we would be allowed in there or we would have to wait outside. So after us leaving Kamwacha, the National Unity Platform party offices, we didn't see anything of security concern. So we left, and by around 12:30, we were like any other journalist covering a story. It was a press conference. And so we thought it would be easy. You don't expect anything at a press conference other than what people are telling you and you interviewing people. So when we got into the car, by the way, instinct can tell you something. I told Wamala, Cliff, you people, I am going with you. You're not leaving me here. I'm not going to jump on a border. I'm coming in. Then, no, we are full. I said, no, let me sit either on your laps or anywhere. I just want to go in with you. I insisted. So we moved, and the first roadblock was behind the Scoville. And then that was the first roadblock with the police. They allowed us to pass through. And we're like, okay, fine. Maybe they're just doing their routine patrols and all that. So we go through Acacia and the second roadblock. And then they still allow us to go through Kanjecha Street. And then the third roadblock was kind of weird because now they started diverting us to use another route. But it's like, Prince Charles Drive is here. Like, no, take that other route. And now when you begin to see the police and the military and the boss on phone, you begin to smell something fishy. And you're like, okay. But we didn't mind. We just continued to the route that directed us to. But now for us to join and continue to enter the UN Human Rights offices, that's when we find a human barrier of police. And they're telling us, no, you can't go beyond this place. Stop here. You're not going anywhere. And a few supporters of National Unity Platform Party were also there, plus their members. And they were asking the police officers, why are you stopping us from going? And their funders were all mute. And now when someone keeps quiet on you, you don't know what they're thinking, you don't know what they're planning. It is better to have someone talk to you than just like keep quiet all of a sudden. So we were not more than 20 journalists in that area, but we obeyed. We obeyed and we said, okay, let's stand here and just wait. If maybe Bobi Wine finishes with his handling of the petition, then he will come back out and maybe address us. We were not even certain that he would come back and still want to talk to us. But we were just anticipating. You know, when people do certain things and the media are around, when you ask them a few questions here and there, They might throw an answer or two to you, and that makes news. And that is what we journalists do. You're not expecting someone to entirely give you everything you want, but you take on what you can get. And then if you have a gap here and there or missing links, then you find where to add and then make a full and comprehensive story, fair, balanced, and having all these other principles. So we were just doing our work. So, you know, as a journalist, when you can't get source A, you have to look for source B. If A, B, and C fail, even up to Z, you have to look for that voice that can add value to your story. So we started conducting a few interviews with NUP members and supporters who are around us there. It wasn't a big crowd, but you see who you can speak to. Of course, they were grumbling here and there. Why are you not allowing us to go in there? And then Nabukera Hanifa, the new woman member of parliament elected for Mukono district, was like, Afande, please allow us to go in there. Our president needs us. That is the party president for NUP, Robert Chagulanyi. He needs us. We need to be there with him. But later we heard that he was in with about 3 people. Later, the UN in their report, they said 5 people delivered the petition with him. So we stayed back and did our interviews with the people we could. And I remember I was doing the recording for the last interview. It was at 1:17 p.m. That is when the last recording actually stopped with a bit of the camera shaking because we had received the order to leave the place. And it wasn't the police who were standing there as barrier for us to enter the UN offices. It was actually the military police. And we didn't understand because the military police had moved around with 2 trucks, and we thought it was usual patrol. You know how, because you're used to seeing them around sometimes, they move and then they don't say anything, they don't do anything at times. So you say, okay, maybe this is usual patrol, and then a whole police truck again goes towards the direction of the UN human rights officers, and you're like, okay, maybe, but in your mind, your instinct, you begin to feel something is not right. We're just a handful of journalists here and a few NUP members here. Why do we have a whole truck of police coming in this direction? And so when all the police truck and the 2 military police vans go in that direction, we were like, okay, maybe they have something to handle in there. We were not bothered. We continued with our work, with our interviews. Raymond, when the first truck came back, it did not come back just to pass the way they had passed and gone. So we saw one of them jump out and order us to leave, but we also obeyed. We started moving, but turning like barely 5 steps away, and then you're turning to hear beatings behind you, and then the other police officers who are just standing there with us. By the way, we even said, hello, Afande. How you try to, because we are human. We're not from some sort of alien society. We know these police officers are our brothers, our sisters, our husbands and wives. So it doesn't hurt to say hello. So we would just say hello to them because it was calm. Nothing was wrong at that time. So when the first order came and then we started running and then you hear people being beaten behind you, that is when the chase started. That is when we started running. I didn't know who was close to me at that point because what I saw, my instincts told me, run. I didn't even plan to run, but I just had to run. Like, run with all the energy you have, run with your life. I am not a marathon champion like Kipchoge or Cheptegei, so you don't expect me to run at a certain speed. I could only run as fast as my body could carry me forward. So I ran and then I feel like my heart is tearing apart. Like, I am tired, I can't take it anymore. I can't continue running. So good enough, our driver was passing by. I think he was also in his mind looking for who can I pick where. But I waved him to slow down. Please slow down. I can't run anymore. So he stopped, not stopping entirely, but slowed down. I jumped, I opened and
Thank you so much for staying with the Fourth Estate. And now, I want to come back with you still, Robert. The story of Cliff and Irene is a story of many journalists for almost 7 years. You've always produced reports on the biggest violators of journalists' rights, and they've been the Uganda Police Force, followed very closely by the army. What must be done this time to stop these people from being the violators of journalists' rights?
That question is a very huge one for us, because very little is within our powers to control the course of events, or even to influence them. Because all we do is the conventional reportage of stories, and that can never be changed. We can never say, stop doing reporting about the politics of the day. The onus is so much on the political heads of this country to really know that we are in a multi-party political dispensation. And as such, people will have dissenting views, and they're entitled to news coverage. It's not a crime for a journalist to trail Bobby Wine or Dr. Patrick or Bowie or any other political opponents of the current government. So until that sinks into their minds, that journalists are not committing a crime in giving space in covering the opposition, the political opposition, we'll just meet in conference rooms, talk about so much, and then at the end of the day, the politics of the day is at play. But also, we need to cultivate a culture of ending impunity. Those that are really caught red-handed should be punished in a way that seems to reflect justice, not just for the sake of saying we are going to do this and that and make lots of empty promises, because we've been fed onto this for a very long time. And once you hear them say this, you feel okay. Now the next person caught red-handed is going to suffer the wrath of the leadership of the army or the police, and nothing happens. The thing that we need to do also is to empower our media regulatory bodies, because they always say journalists are not doing ABCD, and it is wrong for them to want to assume that role as the army, as the police, to say we are going to enforce ABCD within the media, because the operations of the media and the security are completely different. We follow different standard operating procedures, and they do follow others. In theirs, it's just orders and orders and orders. They say, Raymond Mujuni jump. You just jump very high. You do not even question how many times until they say stop. For us, we are trained to ask questions as to what, why, where, you know, who, and that is how we are going to be, even when they do not like that. So they should come to appreciate the critical role of the media, the workings of the media, and letting us be. That is also another thing that we need to really entrench. But that will come along if we hold maybe sensitization meetings. We educate each other in a free and fair environment, not for the sake of saying we want to be seen to be doing something about the army, understanding the work of the media. We have to change the narrative right from the training places, that the training modules. We have to incorporate one about the media, and specialist media practitioners have to be invited in there, not to get their own. Because one time they were telling me about how they train the police guys, and they bring in a senior police person to say, you have been dealing fairly well with the media, so can you take your colleagues through? They do not get a person from within the media fraternity, just get their very own. Who will tell them at the end of the day, once you see cameras, you know you're faced with an enemy. So do you take charge? Those cameras are not your friends. That's how they conclude. So when the guy is taken through some drills of how to work with journalists around, at the end of the day, he knows that these cameras are not their friends. So they would want to have a way of containing or curtailing you from moving around, from capturing all the information. They don't will be used against them. So there's a lot that can be done, as opposed to only trading like blames, apportioning blames. The media did not dress up so well. I do not even buy that notion of the media was not well blended, because we've seen them pursue journalists that are well blended. We've seen them vandalize vehicles of media houses and stealing away everything. We've seen them running after people with press jackets, and to the extent that people even have armored jackets means that the trust is being lost. So in order to instill that trust again, things that are practically visible have to be done. But they have to start from the leadership of the army, leadership of the police, and make a standing
Held culpable.
And yes, you'll be culpable under that vicarious liability clause. But all in all, I want to commend the journalists for staying firm. Because for those that have covered elections, they've really had to go through a lot. They've had to develop thick skin, as though they are equally running for a political office. Wherever they would be seen, they would be beaten. You know, and the beating was abetted by the leaderships there. Because these junior officers, nobody should even lie to us that they do anything without being sanctioned by their leaderships. Not at all. There's this command and control thing. Whatever happens out in the field is so sanctioned by the boss or the operating or the commanding officer. So we will need to have a way of going for the top people, not just the juniors who just execute orders as so given by their bosses.
Irene, a day after your beating, the CDF, no less, addressed the press, issued an apology, promised action, prosecuted some officers that were involved. Was that enough? As someone that had undergone the beating under security services, was that something that was enough?
Raymond, what happened to us was not for us to just receive an apology. We thank him for apologizing. Only, I wish they know how we are even answering questions from our children. My son asked me, so mommy, why did the police beat you? How do I answer this question? I don't even know why I was beaten. I had to run. Instead of running to, there's this advert I love, run to someone, because you know you'll be protected and guided and all that. Not running away from someone because you fear they're going to hurt you. That is the kind of relationship we're asking for. An apology today, and then tomorrow we see the same thing being done to us. We don't want to see more journalists suffer. We have families to take care of. We have children. We have all sorts of things. The pandemic already put so much on our plate to handle. And then we have this, let alone other things that are happening in the media space. And then as a journalist, you're denied information. You ask for this information, and then they begin to look at a certain media house with a particular angle. Hey, you Daily Monitor, you are like this. You New Vision, you're like this. You NBS, you NTV, you're like this. These are stereotypes that will not help us as journalists. We need the space to work, and to work freely. We are only doing our job. And we're asking them to allow us do our job within that free space. If I am a female journalist today,